It's Tuesday, August 13th, and I'm your host, Paula Hersey. On today's show, we check in with Chief Sonneman, learn more about how to recycle smart with Waste Reduction Coordinator Carrie Parcell, and we extend our recycling conversation to a new Shell recycling program here in the town of Barnstable. Now for a look at municipal and legislative notes. The Cape Cod Community College Alumni Network is seeking nominations for the 2020 Alumni of the Year Award. This prestigious award will be presented during the commencement ceremonies on May 20th, 2020. John Cox, president of the college, will introduce and honor the award recipients during the ceremony. One individual who attended or graduated from Cape Cod Community College more than 10 years ago, and one individual who attended or graduated within the past 10 years will receive the award, recognizing their personal and professional achievements. To nominate an alumnus or alumni of the college, please fill out the Alumni of the Year nomination form found at www.cccfoundation.org. Oyster and quahog shells can now be recycled at 3 areas in the town of Barnstable. Natural Resources Shellfish Technician Liz Lewis has how, where, and why. Seashells by the seashore. We're actually recycling them now here in the town of Barnstable. With me, Liz Lewis. Liz, what an exciting program. Tell us how it got started.
So it was an idea that I had. There are other towns that are doing this. There are different programs where they take shells from restaurants and things. And I was saying, why can't we do it here? You know, we have a huge base of people, recreational, commercial, the industry, always wondering what to do with their extra shells. And instead of throwing it back in the ocean, I thought, let's have a designated place for people to throw them.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about this. There's oyster shells, which are not in season right now, folks. So you're not picking those out, but you are picking out quahogs and little necks and steamers. What really is the process of this recycling?
So anyone that gets shellfish, it can be from a restaurant, it can be from, you know, the grocery store, it can be from you going out to get them yourselves. We're asking that people clean them up a little bit, I mean, just so the landings don't stink,
right.
And then throw them in our bins here, and then we will take them with some volunteers, hopefully, and we'll bring them to the transfer station for a pile. So they have to age for 6 months to a year before we can do anything with them. So we'll have a couple piles going, and we'll just have them sit there, we'll rotate them, so really all the meats, any fouling on the organisms can decay.
Decay. And what is the why are we recycling
Why?
that?
I
Yeah,
know, right?
the big question is why.
And that's what people are asking me all the time. They're like, why can't I just throw it back in the ocean? You know, they think they're doing something really good. And yes, that was the old thought, like, let's fight ocean acidification. Let's put these shells back in the ocean. And yes, that is true. However, if you're getting those shells from somewhere else, so let's say you get oysters down in Wellfleet, and then you're up here and you're like, well, I'm doing a good thing, I'm throwing them back in the ocean. Not necessarily true. They have different diseases down there, or different fouling organisms, invasives, that can be transported to our farms here. And so we're trying to prevent that transfer of disease.
Okay.
And so instead of having people throw them back in the ocean, this is still doing a good thing. We're going to collect them, we're going to age them for you, and then we will find something to do with them.
Right. And what are some of the things that you can do with these recycled shells?
So we actually purchase, the county, Barnstable County purchases shell so that we can do remote setting. So where you have shell in a bait bag, it goes to the hatchery, they release the oyster larva, and it sets on the shell, and then we bring that to the ocean, we grow oysters that way. And that's a lot what you see here at Scudder Lane, is what people are picking up from that program. But it's been harder to get shell over the years. It's become way more expensive. And some of the quality of shell hasn't been that great. There's still meats attached, and the oyster larva doesn't want to stick to that. It's gross, and then you have all this fouling, and it's just not a very hospitable place. So I was thinking, okay, I can hit 2 birds with 1 stone, you know? I can prevent the transfer of disease, but also I can have an exclusive shell pile here that we can then use. We'll age it ourselves. We'll use that in our bait bags as a substrate for these animals to set on.
That's fantastic. So
Yeah.
basically it's a full circle.
Exactly. We're being self-sustainable, you know,
Self-sustainable.
and it's a lot less expensive too, which is awesome.
Right. And then let's talk a little bit about the transfer station piece of this. These are going to go to the transfer station. Is there an area set aside there for these?
They've set an area aside for us, thankfully. And you know what? It hasn't been too stinky either. So we're very thankful to the transfer station to work with us because of all the permitting, health things, that sort of stuff.
Right.
They've been great to us, giving us a space that we can put these shells.
Right. And then as we go around town, we're here on the north side at Scudder. Are there other bins in the other maybe south side areas?
Yes, so we're trying to put them in the hot spots. So Cordwood Landing in Catuit, and then Bridge Street Landing in Osterville. And that one from Bridge Street, as it gets quieter over there and our oyster season starts, that will go to Bay Street. Okay. So we're thinking this time of year, yeah, we're probably going to get a lot of quahogs, which is great. And then when we have the 400 people opening weekend of oysters, we'll probably be filling up these bins a lot faster. And so we're putting in locations that's easy. You put your shells in the bin, you come down, you get more oysters, and go slurp those down and come back. So trying to make it as easy as possible for everyone.
As easy as possible.
Yeah.
And I'll just go back to the substrate. The oyster will attach to any shell? It doesn't have to be an oyster
It
shell?
doesn't have to be an oyster. There's been a lot of experiments over the years. People thought originally that they were seeking out oyster shells, but we've been using surf clam shells. That's what we've been purchasing because that's what's easiest to get from the canneries. But they'll stick to anything.
Let's stick to anything.
Yeah.
And then when we kind of, look at this as a program, is this a pilot program? Are we just going to try this, or is this something that you really kind of want to go forward with and make it full blown at all of our shellfish areas?
My hope is that this will develop into something bigger. I really hope one day, time pending, that's the hard part. I hope that we can go to restaurants. I hope that we can get all the shells from wherever. I mean, rather than it going in the landfill, this is something that is really useful. Our animals need this shell in the ocean too. We just have to make sure we're being safe about it. So other towns have tried it, Brewster's tried it, and they're going around to restaurants. And I'm like, well, if they're doing it, why can't we, right? They say they get a lot of forks, and they get a lot of lemons.
Right.
And I've been so happy. I mean, the people of Barnstable have been wonderful. There hasn't been trash in the bins, even places that there aren't trash bins. I'm so thankful. So I'm hoping this is working out really well. I'm hoping that we can expand into something bigger, and this is here to stay.
So as we wrap up, any kind of like last comments for people? They can bring whatever shells that they have from wherever they got them, and then they can place them in the bins.
Yes.
Okay.
And so we're focusing mostly on the quahog and oyster shell, only because steamer shell will break down. It's so brittle, and mussels are the same way. But really, if you want to throw them in there, no big deal. That'll just come out in the wash when we tumble everything.
Right.
So put your shells in there from wherever, restaurants, whatever you want to do, sneak them out of there and put them in the bins.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Liz.
Thank you.
Tons of plastic was taken out of the environment through the Recycle Boat Shrink Wrap program, and more recycling news with Barnstable County Waste Reduction Coordinator Carrie Parcell. We're talking recycling today with Carrie Parcell, the Cooperative Extension Waste Reduction Manager. Coordinator,
manager, it all works.
all sorts of different titles there, but really what you do is you try to make sure that Cape Cod is recycling smart.
Yes, we want to recycle smart, we want to recycle clean, and we want quality recycling markets.
Right. So you had a pilot program this year that seemed to garner a lot of interest, and from my understanding, actually saved a lot of plastic out of the oceans and everywhere else. Tell us a little bit about how the boat shrink wrap program went.
Yeah, so we wrapped up on June 30th. It was about a 9-week program. It was accessible to all Cape towns and communities, as well as harbor masters, boat yards, marinas, etc. And so in that 9 weeks, we recycled about 3.6 tons of boat shrink wrap. And if you remember, Boat shrink wrap, when you take it off of the average boat, it weighs about 15 pounds. We talked about that big burrito wrapped in a bow, no strings, no wires, stuff like that. And so that's the equivalent of about 450 plus boats. Bourne actually collected the most, maybe just an accessible area with the Upper Cape, and then we had Dennis and Eastham who also participated. Not to forget that Sea Grant Woods Hole paid for this,
Right.
so services are not free, but we allowed it to be free for our residents and again boat owners that originate on Cape Cod. And then we had AmeriCorps volunteers, and of course the Extension Department, aka myself, helped, and we all put our efforts together, and it was a great 9 weeks. Very
Right.
cool.
And talk a little bit about that plastic. It's a little different than what we normally consider, our old milk bottles or whatever we throw
Right.
away in our plastics. That plastic can break down and get everywhere, can it?
Yeah, so when you're talking about plastics in general, plastics don't really ever sort of biodegrade or disintegrate. They
Right.
just become like smaller and smaller and smaller nanoplastics. And they get into our drinking water, they get into the, our food supplies because they go into the animals that absorb them, and then we eat those animals, and they even fly out through the air, which is quite interesting. But boat shrink wrap is a number 6 plastic for the most part, because you have to use, there's all these chemicals in there that when you heat it up, it sort of expands, and then as it cools, it shrinks, and that's what makes it a pretty decent weather retardant as far as boats go. It protects it. If you do it correctly when you're cutting it per season, you can actually reuse that up to 3 years because the compounds do break down as you reheat and shrink and reheat and shrink. But you can use it up to about 3 seasons if you want to. Tarps and covered sheds and stuff work just as well. But we all know the weather here on the Cape, and if you're storing your boats here, you want to protect that investment. So it is. It's a highly chemicalized, thick, crazy plastic that can be hard to recycle if there's no market for it. Luckily, we found a market and we found a vendor, and so it all sort of came together. This wasn't our first year, but it was the first year with an expansion outside of a location in Woods Hole at the oceanographic facility, and so it made it more accessible and a little bit more widely known that this was available to the residents and boat owners of Cape. So it was awesome.
Fantastic. And there's always still talk. We're just going to talk smart recycling. Contaminated loads are still out there, aren't they?
They are. The Cape is really pretty good. I mean, residents are pretty cognizant and aware. There are challenges to recycling, just kind of like anything, and as everybody knows, we're all talking about it, is things really getting recycled? Do things go into our landfills? Are they going to our waste to energy facilities? And the short answer is yes, it can, but not purposefully. It's mostly because we're not qualityizing our loads. We're sort of, quantity, with in doubt, put it in the bin, someone else will sort it out, right? And that's what we've been doing for 30 years. And it's, we want it to be convenient, we want it to be easy, but it needs to be right, it needs to be smart. And the way that the markets are is if you think of your toter or a bin that you put all your recycling in, if you put too much contaminants in it, it really becomes a load of trash with recycling in it, not recycling with trash in it. So we kind of have to visualize that. Right. And when you're thinking about the recycling systems for our state, they go through conveyor belts and optics and blowers and magnets, and human hands are touching this. And so if we're not putting the right things in there, you're really, making it a worker safety issue, you're making it a production issue, and you're making it, a processing, sorting, baling issue, because if you have, coat hangers or Christmas lights or baby dolls or diapers or food waste, plastic bags are the #1 contaminant, and they tangle up in that, that system for separation, and that's really our big problem. So it's really sort of knowing what's recyclable versus, somebody else will take care of it for us. We really need to take accountability for our own ability to put the right things in that bin.
Right. And there is a website that helps with that. It has a Recyclepedia,
recyclesmartma.org.
Right.
And it does, right on the homepage, there's a little widget called the Recyclepedia, and you can type in, various items. I believe there's a list more of 400 strong, and you can type in car bumper, and it'll probably tell you to put it in the scrap metal at your transfer station or having to take it to a scrap metal pile. Right. If it says Christmas lights, during the season, most of our transfer stations put out barrels specific to Christmas lights so they can take it to a metal sorter. So there's all different things. I mean, black plastics don't get read by our optic readers, and so black plastics, like the Chinese like bottoms of the to-go containers, are not recyclable because they're not being read, so they're just going into the resin anyway. And so it begs a larger question about, you know, extended producer responsibility and our manufacturers and processors of these particular plastics for our to-go containers, etc. But, you know, for now, the Cape is doing a really nice job.
Right. And one of the last things we would kind of want to touch on is that we now have the ability to recycle our own glass here on Cape Cod. This is like super exciting, really cool technology. It's going to save towns who bring loads to this recycler. Tell us what it is.
Yeah, so we call it processed glass aggregate, and really what it is, it's recyclable glass. So your mayonnaise jars, your jelly jars, your jam jars, put the lid back on, make sure they're not, you know, they don't have to be super clean, don't waste a ton of water cleaning it out, but nice and clean. Your deposit bottles, your wine bottles, things like that. And you don't want tempered glass like windshields, you don't want mirrors in there, you know, photo frame glass, that sort of stuff that's not recyclable. But your recyclable glass in general, you can clean it, cap it, and then take it to your transfer station. And there's 5 towns that source separate their glass from the rest of the commingled, which would be your plastics and tin and aluminum. And what they do is they take it to the town of Dennis, which received a grant through DEP. And they have a big lot where they tip the glass, and it's away from the public because we need to be safe. Okay. And at 600 tons, which currently we're at 540, we have a third-party vendor that comes in, and they actually crush it down to a 3/8 minus, and it's used for roadway, building, construction, and drainage projects. So if you buy a glass container on the Cape, and then you consume, you know, eat whatever was within it, you clean it up, and you take it to one of those 5 transfer stations, it's actually going to be reused here on those projects. And so it's quite fascinating, and it's a really great regional program, and that's what we're working on. With boat shrink wrap, it's regional. With glass, it's regional. We have, you know, mattress recycling, that's regional. We have latex paint, that's regional. And so these are the big things that we're working on as a group, as a community, as Cape, that we can work on together and really sort of give access to folks for that proper recycling and to find those streams and uses for it.
This is fantastic. The Barnstable is participating in this program with the glass.
They are.
So it's really important, again, to look at what you're putting in your recycling. So no ceramic dishes, no porcelain. Nope. It's really literally just...
no drinking glasses. You know, you don't want to put any vases or anything like that in there. Again, it's recyclable glass. So pickle jars, mayonnaise jars, you know, olive jars, those types of things, you know, basically food and beverage. Think of it as food and beverage. And again, with in doubt, you know, you can go to recyclesmartma.org, type it in, and it'll tell you what to do with it. So it's easy peasy. We're trying our best to just make it right there, easy peasy for you.
Right, but we're going to actually probably reduce, reuse, recycle, right?
Yes, I mean, the first, you know, we went from 3 R's, we actually have 9 now. We have 9 R's, but I'm not going to bore you with them nor overwhelm anybody with them. But really, it's kind of like a refuse, reduce, you know, we want to, you know, I have a mason jar at home that somebody gave me some flowers in, and I cleaned it out very thoroughly, and I use it as a drinking jar now. So, you know, and sometimes it's a vase, sometimes I drink out of it. I'm not telling you to do that. However, it, you know, it's something that I option out with that particular, you know, mason jar instead of, you know, tossing it. But I do. I kind of go back and forth between, if I have flowers on my house, it's my vase, and if I don't, it's my drinking glass.
There you go. Excellent. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Carrie.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Chief Sonneman joins us in studio for a recap of 2 community events, Kids Day and Coffee with a Cop. It's a long, hot summer for public safety, and especially for those details out there. Pops by the Sea this weekend. Chief?
Sunday.
We've got some details that'll be out there, kind of directing traffic.
Yep, you'll have volunteers out there directing traffic, controlling some parking. Obviously, parking down in the downtown area will get a little bit tight because people are going to be down for the show, so some of the parking lots are going to get, you know, used up. You're also going to have a lot of pedestrian traffic before and after the show, people coming in and coming out, but specifically after the show, a lot of crossings of South Street, Main Street. So if you're out there out and about doing your thing, please be aware that you're going to have some increased pedestrian presence down in that area. But maybe you shouldn't be out and about. Maybe you should have bought your ticket and you should be at the show.
Right, exactly. And we know that the community service officers are out there as well for the whole weekend.
CSOs are still out there. They'll be out there in force, you know. But you're right. I don't want to say it, but back to school is coming.
Back to school is coming, which is a whole host of different things for folks to remember. There's a heck of a lot more kids on corners that can't be seen.
Corners, sides of the street, traffic because of the buses, people forgetting the bus routes and the times the buses are out there, so there's going to be a little bit of, I hate to, it's a couple of weeks away yet, but, start thinking about it, it's going to be coming up, so, yeah.
First day of school is August 28th, so it's before
that
Labor
far
Day.
away.
It's not that far away.
Not that far away. 2 weeks maybe, right?
Right.
Wow.
Your kids excited to go back to
Oh
school?
yeah, sure, yeah, they're just waiting. They all got their backpacks, they're sitting right by the door right now. In fact, that's probably what they're doing right now, just waiting.
Right, exactly. And this Friday morning, you had a coffee with a cop.
Coffee with a Cop, the Old Village Store, West Barnstable on Route 149. It was fantastic. Thanks for the crew out there. Great breakfast sandwiches, fresh eggs.
Ooh.
Great stuff. Cook them right there on the grill right there. Nice deli. Fantastic.
I know of their sandwiches. I didn't realize they did breakfast stuff too.
Oh, they do. Eggs, bacon.
Right.
Good stuff.
So how is it important, from the chief's standpoint, overlooking the larger town of getting out there with this community outreach? The outlier villages, we see the police presence most normally in the downtown areas. Getting out to the villages, how important is that?
It's always good, get out there, talk to people, see what concerns they have, because legitimately most people don't call the police. They really don't. They don't really have a need to. Unless something's going wrong, they don't really call. But getting out there, talking to people, people still have concerns. They may have questions. Hey, why is this going on? But it's nothing to the point where they're going to call. But, get out there, just getting out there and being seen, having people become familiar with who you are is always a good idea.
Right. And do you have specific officers assigned to different villages? Is that how that works?
Not right now, we do not. Some shifts do have officers that prefer to work different places, so they do work, so like Marston's Mills, periodically, or most of their shifts they do work out there. But right now we tend to rotate the officers around so they know where things are going on around the town completely and have a good understanding of what's going on. So no, not specifically, but we do have officers that are involved in more activity-based. Like obviously we have the school resource officers that are involved with certain populations assigned to certain schools, the adopted school officers that are assigned to specific schools. So the interactions with the community have gone a lot through the youth, assigned to the youth center and stuff. Right. We got officers assigned to Main Street, Hyannis. So it's, kind of gone that way. And, as the department changes, as we move forward in the future and staffing levels change or increase, going back to maybe some sort of village-based police model, is on our radar and is in discussions for staffing in the future, yes.
Right. Well, you have those little substations around. They're not necessarily manned. They're just areas that have a presence of
Yep, we do
police
go
out
officers
there.
that go in there and write reports. We do staff those throughout the week with volunteers and stuff that are in there. So if people have questions, they can go in there and the volunteers can put them in touch with the right people. The one on Main Street obviously is the most frequently used because we have the CSOs that are based out of there. So that one gets used the most heavily, but the one in Marstonville is still used, yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, Chief, thanks for the update. Appreciate
That's
it. You got more?
Oh, no, I'm all done. I'm all done.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Have a great
great
week.
day.
Up next, things to do, places to go, and people to meet. A tale of two villages, the north and the south view of our town. View historic photographs on display now through October 15th at Barnstable Town Hall, second floor meeting rooms. The Art on Loan program displays the works of local artists and cultural organizations on the meeting room walls in Barnstable Town Hall. From the ever-changing Main Street of Hyannis to the evolving uses of Barnstable Harbor, the history of these villages is explored with photographs of work and life. This exhibit is a joint project of the Barnstable Historical Society and the Hyannis Historical Society. Here is a look at the upcoming meetings for boards, commissions, and committees.